We have an incredible set of panelists for you now tonight. We're going to dive into UX, automation, workflow. Maybe we'll pick up on some of that AI stuff. But super excited to have quite a diverse set here. And I think this speaks to how user experience is now a wider responsibility than just that head of design role. However, we do have a head of design with us, Tim. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then if we could go down the line, please.
Sure, great. Hi, everyone. Very nice to be here. My name's Tim Simpson. I am head of design at UBS Investment Bank. Lead a team of designers in the bank, working across all of our divisions and building applications and experiences on UBS's primary digital platform called UBS Neo.
Hi, my name is Jim Warburton. A pleasure to be here, and thank you for that. I am the head of financial services consulting at EPAM Systems. So my team provides business and management consultancy in the financial services sector to complement EPAM's engineering and platform engineering, software engineering capabilities. I'm here. I unashamedly represent more business users and business interests.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Nassau. I'm a business architect in Treasury Capital Markets at Finastra. For those of you who don't know, Finastra is one of the largest pure-play fintech financial software providers in the world across core banking, lending, payments, and TCM. In my role as a business architect, I help our clients and our partners work through technology strategies, solutioning, and innovation.
Evening, everyone. My name is Kathryn Cenac. I work at Bank of Montreal here in London. My role is to run the regulatory solutions teams globally, so managing the regulatory risk for some of the key kind of trade and transaction reporting that has to happen in capital markets.
So we're dealing with capital markets. We know that we're dealing with an environment which is, from a UX perspective, extremely intense. It covers a huge array of fields from data through to design. Tim, how do you start? How do you begin? How do you sit in an environment like a trading floor and begin to say, we can make this better?
So I think one of the most important things is to build a holistic view of what you're trying to solve for. You're right, we work in extremely complex environments. It's very difficult to get access to, certainly within institutional client environments, to get access to end user, certainly on the client side. A little bit easier to get access to people internally, but still, those people are time short, and it's difficult to build up an understanding and spend lots of time with them to really understand what their job is, what their workflows are, and to start to unpick that to see how you can really build those efficiencies, find those opportunities to improve the way in which they work. So that holistic end-to-end view is something that we really try to push. We use tools like kind of traditional experience mapping tools, service blueprinting, to start to go much deeper across the whole journey that an individual or a group are trying to complete a task or a particular goal on. And so using these tools allows us to go much deeper and much broader across the different things that may be influencing or hindering them to be able to get the job done. So that's certainly one thing, using those mapping tools to build shared understandings of what the actual workflow is. The second thing is to really deeply understand the users themselves, not to rely on proxies, but to get as much first-hand experience with the individuals that are actually doing the work, following those journeys, and building a real, that deep understanding yourself by observation, ethnographic research, etc. And then sort of making sure that you understand what they're familiar with, because those complex environments need solutions that they're quick to recognize and quick to understand. So we don't want to necessarily reinvent everything for them by being super creative about the next kind of whizzy, floating, animated thing that's really going to annoy them after about 2 seconds. So having a deep understanding of what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, and then thinking about what the familiarity of that environment is that they're working in.
Wow. I mean, that is a masterclass to begin with. Jim, is that your experience that you've had at EPAM? Is that what you've seen in the market over the years?
Good question. I mean, I was one of the things I was going to focus on actually is with UI and UX, I think, is the data side of it. Because my personal belief is that data is often the Achilles heel of UI, UX. You only need to roll the clock back a few years, where we probably all have experience of projects where the UI element was done, but not necessarily the UX element was done, and putting a layer on top of existing processes where you had very poor data quality, you had really serious data quality issues, you had data in siloed buckets as opposed to being customer-centric. And the results were often not so good. I think we're in a situation now where, because we're in a more regulated environment, because we've had to clean up some of our duplication, because there's a focus on breaking down the silos across that we're now moving towards more UX and UI genuinely working in tandem, as opposed to just putting, to coin a phrase, lipstick on a pig that we did see, say, 10 years ago. And I'm sure Kathryn will talk far more about the regulation side. But certainly our view and the view of some of our customers is that it's almost, I don't think, saying it's a golden age for UI and UX might be exaggerating it a bit, but I think with the compressing of the trade cycle, life cycles you're seeing, with the improved data quality and with the breaking down of silos, all of these are playing into using UI and UX for the benefit of the customers.
I mean, you touched upon so many topics there. You touched on data, you touched on regulation. I think, Matt, from a Finastra perspective, where do you guys sort of play in that kind of field? And given the way data's evolving, given the way that UX is getting deeper into overall workflows, where does data end? Where does UX begin? Is it one and the same thing now?
Definitely. So the short answer is yes, because we're time pressed, right? The reality of today's, and I talk from a TCM perspective, if I sound like a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. Everything is a tradable product, and you have to trade it and report it and deal with it. But listening to the conversation so far and the elements of data management, data is the new gold. We all know that. And living outside of the silos of packaged software, institutionalized enterprise layer applications, means that today we really want to go left to right rather than vertical, up to down with silos. And that data layer is key to being competitive and in growing the market space and liberalizing economies around the world and so forth. Now, having said that, in the TCM space that I could talk about, almost everything that we do is regulated. What you can trade, and Kathryn will probably have an opinion as well. What you trade, what you do after you trade, how you report it, when you report it, timelines, all of that environment is regulated. What doesn't seem to be regulated, at least in the business-to-business space, is the way you navigate through that process, how you do your job on a daily basis. If you're an individual in front of a laptop, a trader, or a risk manager, or someone in app ops or something, what you experience to comply and to be efficient and optimal and productive is somewhat open book. But I think that's definitely changing. And it's changing because we're focusing away from silos and applications and business units, like the risk department or the trading desk or the back office. And we're going to data, which is kind of user profile agnostic. Ideally, people want to have data access at all possible points in the business. And there's two reasons why I see regulation increasing. One is strategic, long-term, and one is short-term. Strategically, I think that the work that OpenFin is doing, and others like it, and the participants in this room, you're raising the level of expectation. You're raising the standard of data management and software to do banking and financial systems and other businesses. And at some point, the regulator can expect that you can all comply to a certain level of technical enablement, which means they can start to bring in regulations that assume that you can have real-time information. And therefore, they expect you to be able to report it in real time. I make the example of my daughter's at school, and 20 years ago I explained to her there were no kids with mobile phones in school. Her learning experience, her educational customer experience, if you like, was classroom-based. And over the years, and up until today, everyone's got a phone, and their user experience is different. Their learning experience is now digital. COVID has enabled that as well, digital classrooms and so forth. But it means then that the schools mandate that some of the experiences you get from your phones, you've got to stop. So regulation comes in because the technology is ubiquitous in the hands of our children in school. And that's happening, I think, at a strategic level certainly across financial markets. And tactically, what's going to accelerate regulation is the word of the year, which is AI. AI, officially the word of the year. And what it can do, and what the good parts of it, the acceleration, the generative help, write the email, get the PowerPoint, compile the data, do the calculations, and tell me what the results are. Great. But when you start to build a better algo trading model, and you raise the risk of flash crash, and how that impacts market abuse regulations or whatever it is, that's where we see the urgency. And the pace of technological change means I think it's going to happen very soon.
I mean, Kathryn, you've been name-checked a couple of times now. We've talked about data, we've talked about regulation. A lot of this is starting to sound quite expensive very quickly. So what are your opinions on some of the regulation stuff that's come up? And then a question to you, and then to anybody else afterwards who'd like to answer. How do you show a return on the investment into an entire data lake, analytics, everything else that you've got going on?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the biggest return on investment for me is going to be the reduced regulatory risk that the banks are under. And really, that's my job, is to protect the bank from that regulatory scrutiny. So as we've touched on here, capital markets is a complex space and it's highly regulated. Every time a trader executes a trade, that information's captured. But then there's a huge amount of logic that has to work across that data to see which events that have been executed need to be reported to which regulator. And some of that reporting today is real time. It's within a couple of minutes of execution. And they're looking at that data. They're watching how quickly you get it to them. It needs to be complete in order for them to govern you correctly. And of course, all of those data points that you're sending need to be accurate. And as we all know, data is difficult. So this space, I think the UI UX space, for me, the return on investment is going to be that risk management. If I can paint a picture of the scenario I have today, I have teams in London, team in Toronto, team in New York. So multiple locations. Each of those teams manages many different regimes. They're moving data to different regulators. And to do that, they're using different tools. So you build quite a complex space. All the data's there. I can gather that, but I have to do that quite manually and reach out. To make my job easier and to get ahead of the regulators, to have transparency across the flows end-to-end, across all the regimes, all the locations, a UI UX solution is what we're looking at the moment. And as you can probably tell from what I'm saying, the return on investment would be almost immediate if you have that transparency. You get to see where your issues are real time, and you can act on those and reduce the risk for the bank. So that's my return on investment, I think, in Maine.
You pay for yourselves. What about anybody else? Like, how are we getting our money back for all of the investment here?
I'd probably take the question in a slightly different way. That the sort of UX is at a point now where we need to be thinking in a much more data-driven way and understanding how every decision that we take from a design perspective in terms of how we change those experiences does have a positive effect and has a return on whatever investment you've made in order to make that change happen. And so the importance from a UX perspective is really that we're building that understanding in to the design skills in our teams, into the product teams and the technology teams that we work with, in order to make sure that's at front of mind in everything that we're doing. It's not just about and as I talked at the beginning about those kind of holistic views that have kind of more qualitative understandings of behaviors and patterns of working, but actually we're driven also from the data side. And that has a really positive connotation from a regulatory perspective, because it makes our regulators feel much more confident in us that we actually know what's going on, that we're measuring everything, and we've got a response when they ask us, well, what is that person doing and why are they on your platform? And, if you've got the right levels of measurement in place, you can answer those questions. So I think there's a shift in our space, in our discipline as well, of thinking much more about how do we bring data measurement into the design process much, much more.
It's a lot more than just crayons these days, isn't it?
I'm afraid so. Arrows and boxes are gone.
Matt, you did this to yourself, so I'm gonna go there. But you mentioned the words of the year. We're going with AI.
Yeah. I didn't vote for it, but I understand a few people did. Right?
And a lot of people requested that we talk a little bit about AI. So with AI, with UX getting better, everybody here is working in some way towards a better experience for users. That bar's been raised. AI is going to change the way users experience all kinds of platforms from now on. Microsoft now ship it with everything, we heard earlier tonight. So what would you do differently now than you did maybe 5 years ago?
Well, I would say AI a lot more today than I would 5 years ago. I think the impact, as you mentioned, of AI is dramatic. We all read the headlines. We all are participating in that transformation. I think the emphasis I would take to the marketplace that I would do differently today than I did 5 years ago is one about communication and explaining. I work in a sales organization, selling software or engaging with customers and finding solutions. But I would also talk about education. And it was mentioned earlier on one of the early panels. Educating, the message would be educate your teams and your staffs about the possibilities of what AI will do. Because not only will it transform their jobs and their roles, and we talk about offloading a lot of manual processes and accelerating outcomes, but also will change the market space that they're in, what their customers expect, what their businesses will generate. And so my call to action would be that everyone I speak to gets on the education wagon. Teach your staff, expose them to what the basic AI concepts are. Embed the Copilot idea. It's a great brand name. I do like it. Embed that in their daily activities, because it's not going to go away. The genie's out of the box, and the sooner they appreciate the impact and equally generate the use cases. Because, frankly, there was talk of hundreds of use cases being tested and ideated, but there are probably 1,000 more. And they'll fall by the wayside. Some will work, some won't work. But you won't create that by committee inside your business. You have to expose it to everyone that you employ, every customer who comes up with an idea. Someone's going to have the next layer of game-changing outputs, and it'll be based on AI, for sure.
And Kathryn, I see you nodding along.
Yeah, AI is hugely important, and I think from a regulation space, the regulators are using it far more as well now. So it's inherent that banks pick up the same and try to keep on top of the environment and get ahead of the regulators if they can. So any innovation that we can use, any organisation should embrace to make our solutions as creative and, if possible, as simple as possible, so that we reduce the complexity that people have to deal with to give answers quickly and keep on top.
Amazing. And Jim, do you have anything that you want to close out with us on the AI topic, or?
I think I'd like to take Matt's point about training. We certainly, with EPAM, we're a very large software company, so we're, clearly AI and ChatGPT, etc., is a huge part of. Is a major impact for us, and we're embarking on absolutely ensuring that people understand the principles of it, going through things like prompt engineering, so that when you use the AI tools, you construct the right prompts for it to get the best answers and do it as an iterative effect. So I absolutely agree with Matt about training. This is a tool which just magically produces results for it. I mean, people have heard about AI tools hallucinating, I think is the phrase that's used. So, I think training on it and making the optimum use of it. I think the other point I'd like to make is I think Microsoft have named it very well. They call it Copilot. And I think it's at this stage, it's about being a co-pilot to assist and maybe produce first drafts of documents or first drafts of, and then you do the fine tuning from there. So certainly that's the way we're working. We're working very heavily on the education. We're allowing people to play with it to get to know the best case. And yes, we are assembling hundreds and hundreds of use cases.
Fantastic. And you guys aren't hallucinating. This panel really was that good. So please, could I have a round of applause for our wonderful panelists?